Okay, we're recording. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the Samkhya101. And let me just turn on my video here. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Hey, yes, we're getting started. I apologize for the delay. We were just helping someone get the audio sorted out. So we are recording. This is recorded. And I'm going to go through some slide presentations. We're going to cover a lot of ground today. I don't know if anyone has had a chance to go to the site. You'll see here, are you all able to see that I'm sharing the San Diego College of Ayurveda website, and I'm logged in here. So I'm actually going to do everything through the website here, and I have some slide presentations. Great. So we have, everyone has audio, and as I said, this is being recorded. So I'm going to go here to the Samkhya website, and this is what you would see if you go to the Samkhya Philosophy 101. There are a number of resources here. So we have some external resources, and there are some topics here. There's the Samkhya module, which is what you would have received in the mail. And there is this Shaddarshana slideshow, which I'm going to go through first. So is everyone able to see the first slide here on the screen? It says 6 philosophical perspectives, Shaddarshana. No, okay. Are you on a computer? Are you using a phone to dial in, or if you do have a computer connection, you should be able to see this slide. Is anyone else able to see? I've just clicked to another slide. Can anyone see this? The slide that says on the top, Darshana means perspective. Okay. All right. So we'll do this another way. No problem. Okay, bear with me just a moment here. I had hoped I could do that through the web interface, but apparently the sharing of the Flash movie, although you should be able to view it individually, it looks like the sharing of the Flash movie is not working. So I'm just copying that over.
Hello everyone, this is Samkhya101. Good morning. So while Krishna is opening the slide, I thought if you have textbook of Ayurveda Part 1, does everybody have that? So whoever has that, we go to chapter 2, which is universal attributes and doshic theory. I'm going to be reading the 5 elements and their attributes, which is page number 25. And Pandita Krishna is going to be discussing it later. So if you read the 5 elements and their attributes, the rishis perceived that in the beginning the world existed in an unmanifested state of consciousness, meaning unmanifest. So Samkhya, you can say, is the theory of cosmology, the theory of numbers, how universe was created, how life was created. And life is made of these 5 basic building blocks of life. These are the 5 elements. So it's not just humans which are made of the 5 elements, but the planet itself. Every organic matter and inorganic matter is made of that. So we'll digress a little and talk about Purush and Prakriti, yin and yang, and how the universe came into being. But no other theory, no other medical system or ancient healing system really talks about life. Now, Ayurveda means knowledge of life. So we have to know, according to Ayurveda, how life began. What are we made up of? Not physically, how the body is made up of flesh, but what are we made up of? So think of a clay pot. A clay can be given so many shapes, and you can do so many things with clay. Similarly, all organic matter and inorganic matter is made of the 5 elements. So, and all of these elements have a quality or an attribute. So, I'm reading further. From the subtle vibration of Om came the space element. So the sound and the space are connected. You go further and you'll talk about how the sense of hearing is connected with the space element. So if someone has problems with the ear, they're tinnitus, for instance, so you immediately know that this is an issue with the space element. And space, it's vata, which is made up of space. So you have to reduce their space element and increase their water element through food and grounding vegetables. So we will do that in the Tridoshas. This ethereal element then began to move through its subtle movements, created the air element. So each element, the elements move from subtle to gross. So you cannot, space is just the space around you. And the space, if you look at the cheat sheet that we gave you, that all of you must have received by now, there is one question about how these 5 elements are manifested in a human body. So the spaces within the human body, this is how it's manifested. It starts from space and it moves, it becomes the air. So the space in action becomes the air. And when air moves quickly, it produces friction. And what happens when you have friction? Heat is generated. So the first element was space, then the space became air. The air started moving, and the friction created heat or fire. So the third element is fire. And when the particles of this heat combined, they form an intense light. So from the heat and light comes the fire element. So it started from subtle that you can't see, it's not tangible space, and it's moving on to the fire element where it's more tangible. You know, you can see it, you can feel the temperature. So ether produced air, and then air manifested into fire. The heat of fire dissolved and liquefied certain ethereal elements forming water, then solidified to form the molecules of earth. So fire becomes water, and then water becomes earth. So later on when we go forward, you will see that there are 3 doshas. So Vata has ether and air. It's dominant element in their body and mind. That's why they're light, they can't gain weight easily. In Pitta, the fire and water element is dominant. And Kapha, the earth element and the water element is dominant. That's why Kaphas are very grounded and they have trouble losing weight. And even the diseases that are manifested or imbalances that are manifested in Kapha, Pitta, Vata are dependent on the elements as well. And we will study that further in a bit. So I'm going to hand it back to Pandit Atul Krishna now.
Okay, hello, and everyone should now see the first slide. Do you see the slide that says 6 philosophical perspectives, Shaddarshana? Can everyone see that? You should now be able to see it. Sorry about the misstep. You should definitely be able to see this content also on the website. And but apparently that just doesn't, the flash sharing just doesn't work going over the WebEx. Okay, so I'm going to go through, give you a brief overview of these 6 philosophical perspectives, and the Sanskrit word for perspective is darshan. So darshan comes from the verbal root to see. So it's literally, it's a perspective. It's a way of viewing things. And these are 6 philosophical systems that have influenced Ayurveda. And they're not mutually exclusive. There's not one that's wrong and the others are right. They're just different perspectives. So you can see a single truth from many different points of view. And you can have many different points of view which are valid, but they may focus on a single aspect. And if you think about it, this is also what is true in human nature. When people have different perspectives on things, it's not necessarily one perspective is wrong and the other one is right, but they're just usually focused on something that is of interest to them. And now here's a very important point. Apparently contradictory points of view can be harmonized, and when we're able to incorporate multiple points of view into our own understanding, it gives us a more mature, better rounded understanding of the whole. So this concept of harmonizing is very important, because this is a concept we're going to talk about, the importance of nonlinear thinking and nonlinear understanding. And this is really what we're talking about. This is generally true in Ayurveda. There are a lot of nonlinear concepts. It means that you need to look at the same thing from more than one perspective at the same time and be able to sort of, reconcile the different perspectives to get sort of a three-dimensional picture of the whole thing. And this nonlinear thinking, where you have multiple perspectives on reality, this was a recurring theme in the philosophical systems of ancient India, where Ayurveda was originated. So having multiple perspectives, again, this is really essential to this nonlinear logic, this nonlinear way of looking at things. And it may sometimes the way we really try to present these concepts in a way that is fairly easy for people to adjust to, but it can sometimes be a little strange. When we talk about something being simultaneously this and simultaneously that, and well, which one is it? It's not one or the other, it's both, and you have to find that convergence and the way that things come together and make sense. And so we really, we're going to use this term nonlinear mode of thinking. Nonlinear, you're going to hear nonlinear a lot, because there are some concepts here which are not terribly difficult, but if you cannot look at them in a nonlinear way, they can just be confusing. So just, think out of the box, and don't get too worried about it if some of this seems a bit difficult. I really encourage all of you, if you, are having trouble with some of these things, put something on the forum. There's no harm in posting something like that just says, this is confusing, I just don't get it. Could you try to explain this particular concept? Some of this is very fundamental, and but it's not really something to get hung up on. So this is not a postgraduate philosophy class, but we're trying to give you some fundamentals, and it's not going to be it shouldn't not be a point to get hung up on. So out of these 6 philosophical perspectives, 3 of them deal with the analysis of matter and action, and that's Samkhya, Karma Mimamsa, and Vaiseshika. And the other 3 are focused on differentiating between matter and spirit, and those are Vedanta, Yoga, and Nyaya. So I'm sure many of you have heard of Vedanta, and yoga, of course, is popular. People sometimes think of yoga as a form of exercise, but of course yoga is much more than that, as any serious yoga practitioner will tell you. Doing the exercises is just it's a prerequisite to controlling the breathing, and that is also part of a whole ladder of different actions that are meant ultimately for a spiritual goal. And Nyaya is something that we may not be that familiar with, but Nyaya is basically logic. So understanding Vedanta and Nyaya is not essential to learning Ayurveda, but we believe these are very helpful concepts for gaining a perspective on Samkhya, because Samkhya, as one of these 6 philosophical perspectives, is not something that just stands on its own or dropped out of nowhere. It is connected with these other philosophical perspectives, points of view. And it's an analytical philosophical approach, and we're not talking about anything that's for or against any particular religious beliefs. It's not about belief system, it's really philosophy. So let's just start from the 3 philosophies that analyze this world and observable reality. So this is just going to be a brief overview of the 6 philosophical systems. So we'll start with these first 3 that are focused on the worldly perspective. So Vaisheshika is the first one, and it's actually an easy one. It comes from the Sanskrit word vishesh, which means the speciality or differentiating characteristic. What is it that makes something special and unique? Vaisheshika analyzes this world from a strictly empirical point of view. What can you observe? Can you finally observe? Can you divide down the components of things? What are the finest components that you can observe? And you can continue that analysis to go to more and more refined levels until you reach the molecular level. And there is terminology that's used in the Sanskrit literature that talks about things in a kind of level of very minute particles, which indicates an understanding of, things at a sort of molecular or macromolecular level. So this is the atomic perspective on this world and the interactions within this world. Then there is Karma Mimamsa. Karma Mimamsa focuses on the analysis of action and the causes and effects of action. So Karma Mimamsa looks at action as the direct cause of various results. It's all about cause and effect. And Karma Mimamsa perceives the role of the doer, the actor, the person who's carrying out action, as central to reality. And now we're talking about Samkhya, and Samkhya as one of the 6 philosophical systems is very important to Ayurveda. A lot of the concepts in Ayurveda are based on understanding basic concepts in Samkhya. So on its face, Samkhya is really not that difficult. It's the philosophy of enumeration. It comes from 2 Sanskrit verbal components, sam meaning to aggregate and kya meaning to describe. So when we bring things together, put things in a group and describe them by enumeration, that is called Samkhya. So Samkhya looks at the root causes and taxonomy of matter. How can you categorize things? How can you break things down? Are you able to categorize things? And that's another very, very important thing in Ayurveda. There's a lot of taxonomy in it, and it trickles down from looking at this world in terms of its basic constituent groups of ingredients down to diagnosing imbalances and disorders and looking at the processes that are happening within the body. It's sort of like it's a philosophy that can look at the universe and the sort of macro reality, and it's taking the same approach in looking at the universe and creation and applying that same sort of approach to understanding what's happening in the body and processes within the body. So we're going to talk about Samkhya a lot, but here we're just talking briefly about Samkhya as one of 6 philosophical perspectives. Now, in Samkhya, we begin to look at the interaction between material and non-material realities. So, we look at matter, and we're also looking at spirit, and how do they get connected together. And there are some views on Samkhya that suggest that it's mechanical, and they don't really look, where is this connected to the outside reality? We believe that it's easier to look at this from the perspective of Vedanta, and we also believe that this is really necessary if we want to embrace the definition of Ayurveda that's given in Sushruta Samhita. We believe that the sages who set down the knowledge of Ayurveda had this type of perspective, not just they were using the terminology of Samkhya, but they were also familiar with Vedanta and these other 6 philosophical systems, which are not mutually exclusive. So Nyaya, and of course we're going to go into quite a lot more depth on Samkhya. That's going to be our main topic of discussion today. And once again, this slideshow is available on the website when you go to SanDiegoCollegeofAyurveda.com/courses and you log in and you go to Samkhya Philosophy 101. You will see this Shad Darshana overview is going to be one of the links that you'll see there, and you will be able to view this slideshow as a flash movie. So, and of course this presentation is also being recorded with the audio and the screen sharing. So Nyaya is logic, and specifically it's non-linear logic. It is, it's used as a common vocabulary for describing other philosophical perspectives. It's also used as a tool for making divisions between perception and reality with the goal of understanding what's beyond what we can perceive. So it's meant as sort of a tool that can help us to go beyond observable reality and understand spiritual reality, non-material reality. So due to the non-linear nature of Nyaya, this has always been considered an extremely difficult subject to master because there's so much subtlety in traditional Nyaya. It's often expressed as sutras or aphorisms. I personally, I find it's a fascinating subject. I am not an expert in traditional Nyaya, but it's sometimes very amusing and interesting the way that some of the basic principles of the Nyaya are expressed. Then we come to Vedanta. Vedanta aims at having a unified understanding of the ultimate non-material reality, or Brahman, and how Brahman can exist as the individual self, Atman, and how Atman becomes entangled in the material world. So this is really, it's really all about spiritual reality and what is the taxonomy of spiritual reality. So remember that we said Samkhya is about enumeration and taxonomy of this world. Vedanta is really about the taxonomy of spiritual reality, that reality which we cannot directly perceive, but by logic, Nyaya, we can understand the presence and effects of spiritual reality within this world, within our own existence. Vedanta aims to summarize all the knowledge given in the Vedas and and Upanishads. Vedanta comes from two words, Veda, meaning knowledge, also meaning the Vedas, and Anta, the end. So if we can come to the conclusion of all knowledge, that's what Vedanta attempts to encapsulate. Vedanta describes both energy, Shakti, and the wielder of energy, Shaktiman. This is a very, very important concept because this is directly related to the concept of Prakriti and Purusha. Prakriti is a manifestation of Shakti, and Purusha is a manifestation of Shaktiman. And we're going to talk more about that shortly. And Vedanta describes the oneness or the unity of the individual self and the supreme self, as well as their separateness. This is a very, very interesting concept, and we could go into a lot of detail on this, and sometimes very subtle differences in understanding. But it's very, again, remember this concept of nonlinear thought, and how I said that you will sometimes hear a statement that says one thing and something that's apparently contradictory. This is a very good example. Vedanta describes that there is only Brahman and there is nothing else. And Vedanta also describes that there is a separate existence. It says that the Brahman does not transform, but it also describes how the Atma, the individual self, exists. So this is apparently contradictory, but that's really beyond the scope of this presentation. And next we come to yoga. So yoga is the philosophy of union. It is a process of, remember we said Vedanta is like a taxonomy of spiritual reality. Yoga is like a philosophy of how to reach spiritual reality, how to join. It wants to unite the individual embodied self, the Atman, with the supreme unlimited self, Brahman. So yoga philosophy looks at this world and says, well, you know, we're in this world and we experience unhappiness because of birth, death, disease, old age. How can we get out of these types of sufferings and join up with what, you know, yoga says, we're really happy when we are united with the Supreme, when we're united with the Supreme Unlimited Brahman. And how can we go about doing that? And let's look at a process for doing it. And that's what yoga is. There are many different yoga systems. There's Ashtanga yoga, Bhakti yoga, Jnana yoga, many, many different yoga systems, but all of them generally aim at the same goal, which is to have union with the divine. And then it is not, when I'm talking about union, it's not, in some cases, there's an idea of you know, becoming one, entering into reality. There's also a concept, for, especially, for example, in Bhakti yoga, a concept of union as being with the Supreme as a you know, object of love. And so these are all concepts that exist within yoga. And the circulation of the vital force within the body and its relation to our state of mind are described in classic yoga texts, such as Patanjali Yoga Sutra. So that's very, very hard to encapsulate yoga in one slide, but that's the best I could do. So what is the connection to Ayurveda? Samkhya enumerates matter in a way that forms the logical basis for essential categories that we use in Ayurveda study and practice. So you think about a vocabulary that we use for describing Ayurveda, even more than, although, you know, we also talk in terms of chemistry and other analytical terms. It's almost like if you went to a study to become a medical doctor, you would need to learn chemistry, and there would be a lot of vocabulary of chemistry that would be used in describing bodily processes. Well, Ayurveda uses the vocabulary of Samkhya and the conceptual ideas that are involved in logic, in terms of, you know, how we do the nonlinear thinking and understand the connections between different things, and also the way that transformation occurs. So, and the view of the world, according to Samkhya, is very much analog to the view of bodily processes. So Ayurveda is looking at the body as a microcosm that is also connected with the macrocosm. So there's a lot of connection here. Now, Vedanta is something that gives us additional perspective, because it's helping us understand what is the, how is it that mind, body, and self can operate in harmony. Well, we have to understand self, and that's a topic. The topic of self is very much the focus of Vedanta and yoga. So we're not just talking about Samkhya, but we also are going to use vocabulary from Vedanta and yoga that talk about the self, that talk about the connection of the self with a greater reality. And all of these things operating in harmony, this is what is the Ayur in Ayurveda. So, you know, there's a lot of connectedness, and there's a way of looking at how things operate in harmony, and this is something that's very important in understanding Ayurveda. And yoga also provides many very practical methods for perceiving and modifying the flow of our vital energy, or prana, within the body. We'll use the term prana quite a lot. Prana meaning vital force. There are also vital flows of vital energy within the body, are described as 5 primary and 5 secondary. So you'll hear the terms Pran, Apan, Udan, Saman, Vyan, and 5 secondary. So these are known by people who practice yoga. We also describe these in discussing Ayurveda. So that's it for this particular presentation. And before I move on to the next slideshow, do we have any questions at this point? Again, I encourage you to post your questions on the forum, and that's a good way of asking questions, because then we can reply and others can also see, and someone else may have also had the same question, and that way we can all benefit. Okay, I'm going to move on to a introduction to Samkhya. So we're going to go a little bit more into depth on Samkhya. Okay, so So this is going to be a brief overview of Samkhya, and it's going to start with Purusha and Prakriti. So there's a little bit of the Shadarshan concepts that we'll be using here. This slideshow is also present as Samkhya Introduction on the website, San Diego College of Ayurveda.com/courses. Go to Samkhya Philosophy 101, and you should see a link to this slideshow also. It is present as a flash movie. It should be viewable on just about anything except iPhone and iPad, on any computer, Windows, Mac, Linux. So we're just going to go through this and try to give you a brief overview of Samkhya and go a little bit more in depth now and focus on Samkhya. So if you remember, we said that Samkhya is the philosophy of taxonomy and enumeration. And it's a very important perspective that recurs quite a lot in the study of Ayurveda. And we begin with the point of Purusha and Prakriti. So Purusha and Prakriti, in this case, is referring to the masculine and feminine principles. So we're going to just move upstairs here a little bit and start with a very important concept in Vedanta, and that is the concept of Brahman. Brahman means spirit. According to Vedanta, there is only one indivisible entity known as Brahman, or the Supreme Spirit. And although Brahman is never divided and does not transform, Brahman exists in both energy and the possessor of energy. And the Sanskrit terms, which we mentioned briefly before, are Shakti, which is energy, and that is a feminine noun, and Shaktiman, the energetic, which is masculine. So we have this concept of the ultimate divine reality as both masculine and feminine. And this is a very important concept, and it is a nonlinear concept. How can you have something that's undivided, but it exists in both the form of energy and the possessor of energy, the source of energy? That is a nonlinear concept. It is very essential in Vedanta. So, and the individual Atman, or the soul, is considered to be a minute spark of the energy of the unlimited Brahman. So the Atma, the self that resides within the body, is considered to be of the same quality as Brahman, a spark. Then there is this question that sometimes comes up: how, if Brahman is undivided and indivisible, how can it be present in a fragmented part as a spark? And that is because the Atma is actually part of the Shakti. So this leads to the very interesting conclusion that actually the Atma has a more of a feminine existence in the frame of spiritual reality. And our playing of masculine and feminine roles in this world is more related to the particular bodies that the Atman, or soul, inhabits. So let's talk about this masculine and feminine. How can the divine be both masculine and feminine? So this masculine, the Shaktiman, and here's a good question that we have. The spirit, when we're talking about spirit, we're talking about spiritual reality, that which exists beyond this world, beyond what is observable, what can only be perceived through inference. And soul, when we're talking about soul, this is just a word for the Atman, the soul within the body. That which, when it leaves the body is dead. That is what we call Atman. It is not something that's measurable, but it is very much an important concept, and it is, in fact, it is part of the definition of Ayurveda, how the Atman, together with the unity of mind, body, intellect, vital force, are all. So spirit can also refer to the greater spirit, Brahman, and soul is referring to Atman, basically. And I can also answer that, I think, a little bit more clearly offline, but that's an excellent question, and thank you very much for bringing that up. So let's talk about the masculine and feminine aspects. They are inseparable, but they can act independently. So we say that there's, masculine and feminine aspects of the divine are together, they're inseparable, but they can also act independently. And again, this is a nonlinear concept. This is one of these simultaneously. They're not different, they're not separate, but they can act independently. And this is, again, it's a nonlinear concept, but this is a very important part of this sort of understanding of what we think of as the spiritual basis of Prakriti and Purush, the concept that is the root of Samkhya philosophy. So Brahman is indivisible, but Shakti, the energy of Brahman, can transform and manifest both in minute degrees and in infinite degrees. So the Atman, the soul, is a minute manifestation of Shakti, of spiritual energy. It's like a little spark, and the Brahman is like the sun. So you can have a very hot little tiny spark that's very, very tiny, but it's as hot as the sun. But trying to compare the quantity, it's just off the scale. It's very hard to come up with the numbers that can compare that. So Shakti can manifest in both minute and infinite degrees. In the context of creation, Brahman manifests as the Purush, and one aspect of Shakti manifests as Prakriti. And there is also a representation of Linga and Yoni, which are sort of abstract representations of the Purush as Shambhu and Prakriti as Durga. Shambhu is a name of Shiva, who has a role also in creation as well as in destruction. In the role of creation, he is present as a manifestation of Brahman. So that's, again, something that I'm glossing over, but it's just sort of a side point of interest here. So now we are actually coming into the scope of Samkhya philosophy. We've really been talking up to this point, we've been talking in this particular slideshow, we've been talking about Vedanta. Now we're really starting to talk about Samkhya philosophy because we're starting with Purusha and Prakriti. So remember, we said Purusha is a manifestation of Brahman and Prakriti is a manifestation of Shakti. When the Purush and the Prakriti, the masculine and feminine principles combine, they produce elements of the visible creation. And the first thing that is produced is Ahankar, which is the principle of ego or identity. This is considered an element. It is an ingredient. It is a very essential ingredient. So Prakriti as energy contains all the ingredients for creation in an unmanifest state. And when we talk about ingredients, we're talking about both matter and energy. So this is like the concept in physics of the conservation of matter and energy. Everything exists either in a state of matter or a state of energy, and there's a way that you can actually quantify the transformation of matter to energy, and there's a well-known formula for that, E = mc squared. And there's theoretically a way to convert energy back into matter, but no one has really figured that out. But Prakriti, in its initial state, contains everything, all the matter, all the energy. And now we're talking about energy not in the terms of Shakti, because Prakriti, remember, is a manifestation of Shakti. We're talking about energy in terms of light, heat, radiation, all the types of observable energy that we have in this world. So Purush inspires Prakriti and injects time into Mahat, which is the unmanifest state of creation. So the implication here is that in the concept of spiritual reality described in Vedanta, time is actually something that exists in this world, and this is an ingredient of one of the first ingredients of creation. This again touches on the concept in cosmology of the Big Bang, where the time scale of the theoretical origin of the universe is so compressed that, practically speaking, time does not exist. You know, we're going down from nanoseconds and femtoseconds to scales of time that we have to describe by using, very high negative powers of 10. And it's a very interesting theory, and it's not really necessarily incompatible with this view of Prakriti and Purush. So let's talk about this first byproduct of the interaction of Purush and Prakriti. That is Ahankar, the ego principle. So what does Ahankar do? It's a kind of glue, and it connects this non-material Jiva Shakti. Remember we said that Atman is this minute spark of the Shakti of the unlimited Brahman. It's also called Jiva Shakti, means the energy of Brahman, of which forms the living beings. So Ahankar is kind of this glue that binds that Atman, that little tiny spark of the unlimited Brahman, to the other components of this visible creation. And what we perceive as the self underlying body, mind, and intellect is this tiny spark of Brahman as filtered through Ahankar. So Ahankar is our sense of self, our sense of identity, our ego, our self-concept. And we're talking about this ego as a separate thing from mind and intellect, which we'll discuss next. But first, there are these gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. So these gunas are three qualities, and you are going to hear a lot of discussion of sattva, rajas, and tamas. You'll sometimes hear them as a compound, sattva gun, rajogun, and tamogun. That is simply the way that we make compound words in Sanskrit. We'll also sometimes say sattva, rajas, and tamas. So sattva is the mode of purity. Think of a white light. Everything is very white, very pure. It's balanced. It's peaceful. It's characterized by equanimity, equal, not partial to anyone, but being equal to everyone. And this quality of sattva is very essential for maintenance. If something is perfectly balanced and not disturbed, it can go on existing very peacefully. Now, Rajogun, this is the mode of passion. It's all painted in shades of red. It's characterized by attachment, desire, action. It's essential to creation. It's that mode of getting up and going out and doing things and building things and conquering and moving. And that is essential to creation. And then there is this tamas. Tamogun is the mode of ignorance. Think of its shades of very dark, kind of midnight blue. And it's characterized by sleep, apathy, laziness, becoming angry, and it is essential to destruction. So if you think about these basic attributes of Rajogun and Tamogun especially, you'll often find they're together. Someone becomes angry and then they want to go fight. Well, the things that are involved in fighting are often associated with the Rajogun. And sometimes things have to be created to be involved in fighting. But the type of anger and prejudice and hostility that are often involved in fighting are qualities of Tamogun, or ignorance. So we're talking about these three qualities, sattva, rajas, and tamas. But think of them like three primary colors. You will almost never find purely one or the other. There's almost always a mix, and there can be such a huge variety of mixtures. Think of three primary colors and how you end up with 16 million colors on a computer display by combination of those. This is really how these three gunas are combined. So these three gunas now have come into being in this concept of creation that begins with the union of Purusha and Prakriti. So now we're combining. We're going to take Ahankar, that ego principle, and mix that with Sattva Gun. And from this combination, we get the element of mind, manas. Mind provides the functions of thinking, feeling, and willing. Mind is also that part of us that's involved in meditation. When we can make the mind still and peaceful and focus the mind on something, then this is putting the mind in a state of Sattva Gun. This is like the natural, the best state for the mind is the state of being in goodness, being in Sattva Gun, being peaceful and being balanced. And as anyone who's tried to meditate can tell you, it can be a little challenging sometimes because the mind wants to reach out to all the different things that we've been thinking about and feeling about and wanting, and it's hard to get the mind to stop running around and just be peaceful and be focused. So when we take Ahankar and mix it with Rajogun, this mode of passion, it produces the element of intelligence, or buddhi. Intellect gives us discernment, being separated from separating what is from what is not, ascertainment, understanding the nature of things, and memory. And why Ahankar mixed with Rajogun? Because intellect is essential for creating things. And again, intellect usually works in harmony with the mind. Again, very good question here. Is ego is what we're referring to as the conventional id or I, and does that exist at a higher level of consciousness? The answer is yes and yes, but when one finally has, one of the goals of yoga is mukti, or becoming liberated, and in the liberated state, the Atman, soul, exists in union with Brahman without these coverings beginning with Ahankar. So the conventional I, it depends on the concept. Someone may say I and they think of the body as the self. Someone else may think of the mind as and intellect as the self. I think, therefore I am. We would say that these are symptoms of consciousness, but the self is really Atman, and it is Atman which, when that leaves the body, then it is a dead body. And Atman is carried by the subtle body, which is mind, intellect, and ego. So as long as we're in this world, we're covered by mind, intellect, and ego, which adapt themselves as we go from one physical body to another. So it's a very, very interesting question. I would like to answer that, address it more offline, and maybe you can write something and put it up there. But this is the concept of ego, ahankar. This is part of the subtle body, or the sukshma sharir, and this is something that is with us as long as we're in worldly existence. If we're in a higher level of consciousness, then the mind, intellect, and ego become more refined. It is sometimes said that animal life is simply a less refined, it's a less refined manifestation, because animals show signs of thinking, feeling, and willing. It's just that their thinking and feeling and willing is less refined, and they lack the ability to understand spiritual topics and complex topics, but they do feel, they do show signs of thought, and they definitely show signs of desire. So, to answer that briefly. So, when we mix ahankar with tamogun, it produces the tanmatras, the subtle forms of sense perception, which in turn manifest the elements. So now we're actually starting to talk about gross matter as opposed to the these elements of mind, intellect, and ego. So now we're going to talk about 5 tanmatras. So these 5 sensory abilities and their corresponding objectives are associated with 5 categories of elements. So we start with sound. Sound and the ability to hear is associated with space. Why is that? Because sound waves travel through a medium. So when we say space, we're not talking about like outer space between the planets' vacuum. We're also talking about the space between the nucleus of an atom and its shell made of electrons. We're talking about the space that exists between atoms in a molecule. We're talking about space, and that's such an important ingredient. And space defines sound because it's all about what's the space between sound waves and how quickly do the sound waves arrive at your ear. It can change if your ear is moving. So one of these tanmatras, sound and the ability to hear, this is one of these ingredients of creation according to Samkhya. And then there's the ability to touch, to perceive touch, which is associated with air. There's the ability to see, which is associated with fire and all forms of visible radiation. There's the ability to taste, which is associated with water, and the ability to smell, which is associated with earth. So now we're talking about these things that we said are associated. These are the 5 elements, the Pancha Mahabhut. You'll hear this term quite a lot, Panchamahabhut. The five major, we can say 5 major elemental groups, or 5 elements, either one. Because obviously there are many more elements, but they're really combinations of these 5. And there are also taxonomically, we can categorize different types of things into these 5 groups. So we have space and air and all gases. We have water and all liquids. We have fire and all forms of light, heat, and radiation. And we have earth and all solids. So these 5, they combine at the atomic level, at the subatomic level, at the molecular level, and again, think about the space between an atomic nucleus and its electrons. So when we're talking about Panchamahabhut in Ayurveda, we're not just talking about like a medieval concept of, everything is, earth, water, wind, fire, and ether. We're basically talking about this way of looking at these elemental groups. And if you've just joined us, this slideshow is available online, and this presentation is also being recorded, so you can view the whole presentation from the start later. So what are the qualities of the Panchamahabhut? They are manifested in order from the most ethereal, which is space, down to the most substantial, which is earth. So to remember the order, and because this order is very important to remember, just you can think back to your high school physics. Air is contained in space. If you compress air, it produces heat or fire. Fire produces water vapor along with other things. And if you evaporate water, it almost always leaves behind some solids. So space, air, fire, water, earth, from top to bottom. So that's a useful way to remember the order in which we talk about these Panchamahabhut. So again, now we have talked about all these things, starting from Ahankar in contact with Tamogun, how the Tanmatras and the Panchamahabhut are manifest, and a further association are the 5 knowledge-acquiring senses. So the sense of hearing is what perceives sound, which travels in a medium through space. The sense of touch perceives sensations, which can be carried by air. We consider that the sense of touch is primarily a function of nerve endings, which are present in the skin and within the body in different places. And nervous disorders are generally associated with vata disorders, disorders of the circulation of air within the body. The sense of sight. Sight is used to perceive form, which is illuminated by fire and light. So the sense of sight is associated with fire. The sense of taste. The sense of taste depends on liquids, water, juice, saliva. The sense of taste is associated with water. The sense of smell. So the sense of smell depends on aromas. And aromas originate in earth. So think about a patch of dirt. Any gardener knows the best kind of dirt has a lot of rotten things in it. Take all of your good kitchen trash and you put that in a compost heap and let it rot, let it rot, let it rot, and plow that into the dirt and plant some seed, and you'll have a really nice garden, and you can grow jasmine flowers and onions and mangoes and bananas, and they all come out of dirt that has really rotten things in it, and they have different fragrances and different tastes. And of course, a component of taste is smell as well. But all of that comes from the earth. It's all the potential is present in earth. So we say that earth is associated with the sense of smell. Now, the next group that we have in Samkhya are the 5 working senses, the karma indriyas. So these are basic sensory abilities, and they are called working senses. They're called karmendriyas, or I have broken up the compound here as karma indriya. There's the ability to grasp and perform work, which is associated with the arms and hands. There is the ability to speak, which is associated with tongue, lips, pharynx. Air is supplied by the lungs. There's the ability to move, which is associated with the legs and feet. There's the ability to procreate, associated with the male and female genitalia. And there is the ability to evacuate, associated with the colon and rectum. So now we can recap. 24 elements. Sometimes if we include time, it's 25. So just so you see how this all fits together into 24 basic elements. We have Atman, Ahankar, mind, intelligence, sound, objects of touch, perception of form, objects of taste, objects of smell, and then the 5 Panchamahabhut, air, space, air, fire, water, earth, and then the 5 knowledge acquiring senses, the sense of hearing, sense of touch, sense of vision, sense of taste, sense of smell. And then there are the 5 working senses: ability to move, ability to grasp, ability to speak, ability to procreate, and ability to evacuate. So that concludes this introduction to Samkhya philosophy. And again, this is present. If you go here, you'll see that I'm here on the site, and I assume everyone can see the website here. So if you go to the main website and log in, and if you scroll down to these course categories, and you go to the Samkhya Philosophy 101, then you're here at this page, and you have links to all of the material. So again, here you have the Shaddarshana slideshow. You can click on the slides to navigate through them. I know this is not, slides are not showing up, but you should be able to view this in your browser. And there's also this introduction to Samkhya philosophy slideshow that we just went over, and you should also be able to view that. So any questions at this point? Okay, so we have some assignment for next week's session. You should all have Dr. Vasantlad's textbook of Ayurveda Fundamental Principles. And in chapter 2, you want to read pages 25 through 35. Also, I am going to be adding some other online materials as well as a quiz. And again, the material that we've had in the slideshow, as well as this presentation, has been recorded. And the slideshows themselves, you should be able to get to them on the site. If you have any problem in accessing those slideshows, please do let me know. Either email me or email Dr. Monica, or post something on the forum so that we know we've tried to make sure that everything is accessible, but sometimes it doesn't, it doesn't all work out the way that we've expected.
Hello everyone, this is Dr. Patia. How was your class? So if you look at, let me unshare this first. Okay, so if you look at, you have a new neighbor who moves into, next door, and how do you describe a human being? How do you describe the person next door? How do you describe your student? How do you describe your patient? You describe with a quality, attributes. So these are very important. So in Ayurveda, everything, especially the three doshas, have a quality. If you notice, is it still noisy now, Bert, or is it okay? That was my, it's okay now? Okay. So if you look at, there are 20 attributes, and it's very, very important because it forms the basis of Ayurvedic nutrition as well. And it forms the basis of diet protocol, herb protocols, yoga protocols. These attributes form every single thing within the three doshas. For example, as you go forward, you will learn that a kapha person is made of earth, right? And earth is, what is the quality of earth and water? It's heavy. So, and if you've heard, if you've overeaten, how would you describe the quality of overeating? The food is pushing down from your stomach. You would say, oh, I feel heavy. When you say you feel heavy, meaning the kapha is high, you want to lighten up. You want to put the light quality of air. So there are 10 opposing qualities or attributes, and you just have to memorize them. There's no way around it. You've given it both in Sanskrit as well as English. So the first quality you will know is Guru and Lagu. If you look at page 32 of your textbook, or you look at the module that we sent you, module 1, then you look at all the qualities. We want you to read and memorize them if possible, because even if we do it in class, you still need to know entire protocol, diet protocol, daily regimen protocol, herb protocol for as an Ayurvedic practitioner is based on this quality. Because all the symptoms that a person will show, I feel lightheaded, I have insomnia, I can't sleep, I feel ungrounded, meaning that they have a quality of lightness, we need to give the quality of heaviness to them. And then you have a quality of being, slow or sharp. Pitta has a quality of sharpness. So even the pain Vata, Pitta, and Kapha have, the Vata pain is irregular. People who experience Vata pain, it comes and goes. It's always there. Kapha pain never goes away, but it's dull and dropping. Pitta pain, a headache, a Pitta headache is around the temples and it's sharp and inflamed. It has the quality of sharpness. So everything is divided into 3 based on the attributes. If it's sharp or dull, Vata and Kapha are always feeling cold, and Pittas are usually always hot. So hot and cold are 2 qualities. So in order to help the Vata and Kapha, we give them the hot quality. So heating herbs and heating food, and to Pitta we give cooling foods and cooling herbs. Then you will see this word being thrown around a lot, oily or unctuous. It's just an old English word from India that Ayurvedic practitioners love to throw around, unctuous. And it just means that it's oily. So Kapha have this quality of oily, and one of the protocols in Ayurveda is Abhyanga massage. And Abhyanga massage is done with sesame oil. So Vata is, you move into a dry climate like California. It's so dry. Your hair becomes dry, your body becomes dry, you feel dehydrated, your stools are hard and dry, especially if you're a Vata. Then you not only give them warm water to drink, but you also massage them with sesame oil, because that makes an oily quality. So I'm just trying to give you an example why qualities are so important. Then you have a quality Slakshana Kara. Slakshana actually means slimy. If you look at page 33 in the Universal Attributes. So Slakshana actually means smooth or slimy. So Kapha is smooth. If you go ahead and study the advanced practitioner, you'll do the pulse diagnosis as well. And even in the pulse, we are looking at the qualities. If you come and attend one of my open houses that I do every few Saturdays, then we'll do a self-pulse diagnosis. And then the way we describe anybody's pulse is it heavy, is it light, is it slow, is it sharp, is it hot, is it cold, is it smooth, is it rough? So all of this, and then you have, is it dense, liquid, soft, hard, static, mobile, subtle, gross. So all of you should know these 20 qualities, and we'll discuss them along. Once you know these qualities, and you know these are the qualities of Vata, Pitta, Kapha, it's almost like it's coded, it falls into place. So I know it's a lot of information. If you go to Ayurveda 101, your quiz is live till, there's a small quiz that we've given. And once you've done the quiz, we know when you do a quiz, when you submit assignments, we have feedback and we know where you're at. So if you go to Ayurveda 101, your first quiz is live. And it's a small quiz, if everybody could complete it. So if you look at Ayurveda 101, you have, do you see this? The quiz 1, Ayurveda 101. So you can continue a quiz. There's a password you have to give. It is already being posted. Okay. So if you go to Ayurveda 101, it says quiz 1, Ayurveda 101 week 2. And a password's being given online. You have up to June 15th, another 10 days to complete it. And then the next quiz that will happen would be a quiz on Samkhya. And within 2 weeks, we're starting Tridoshas. In fact, in a way, we have started Tridoshas from Tuesday, because we're asking you to read about traditions before we discuss them in detail. So our classes, the way we've designed, are very condensed and intense, and we cover a lot of ground. And then whatever you do in your off time, the reading and the quizzes, assignments, please go ahead and ask any questions you want on the forum. Some of you have been posting questions. We've been trying to reply, and that's about it. And before I leave, we have an open house Saturday, June 11th on Digestive Fire Agni at our location in Escondido. And then we have another on June 18th on women issues. Our open houses are usually afternoon from 3 or 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock. And all the information is posted on the website. So if anybody is around and wants to attend, you're more than welcome. Any questions? Okay.